G'day folks, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. And before I go to bed tonight, I just want to do a bit of a video tribute to my friend Dennis Pashen. I have to admit, ladies and gentlemen, I was a bit shocked about the loss of a great, wonderful friend. He is not only that, he's a person who I consider as a very good mentor to me and to many others out there. A lot of people viewed him as like an uncle, brother, father, and well, you know, honestly, a lot of people viewed him as a wonderful person. And Dennis Pashen, for me, folks, when I first met him, was my first job back in Mount Isa Center for Rural Remote Health, which is also known as MICRRH back in the day. And those were wonderful days. I just want to put it out there. Those were wonderful days. I remember the days of when I first worked there, and I was a little IT trainee in a rural remote town called Mount Isa where I grew up. I have to admit that as far as the story goes and the history, that's where my IT career began, just to let you know. When I first started out of high school, I pretty much didn't want to go to uni straight away. But the funny thing is that when I was thinking about my story and my history and my time back then, I was, in the early 2000s, I was really not interested in going to university. I actually just wanted to earn cash to save up money, and that was a dream to get myself all sorted for studying and stuff, right? So in the end, I decided to look at the TAFE college and to university because like I was starting to get a little bit desperate. And when I finally started finding a job, I landed a job, and I was very shocked about like an IT traineeship that was actually based in a university company, and I never heard about it, and it was located behind the Mount Isa Base Hospital. And I was like, said to myself, wow, okay, there's a new building here. I had no idea this has existed. And then I found out that my uncle, Ron McCulloch, was there, and he was one of the advisory board members. And I told him that I was going to go ahead and join in, for the interview for this workplace, and I had no idea what I was in for. When I got into the interview, I was a nervous wreck. And basically, I didn't met Dennis at the time, but when I first met Dennis, I have to say that he was a very, kind, welcoming, heartwarming person. And he had a great sense of humor, a bit of a wit sense of humor as well, too, if you will. And I have to admit, when I first met Dennis, I was just like a young bloke. I had no idea what I was in for. And pretty much I just enjoyed my time, getting to know him. And when I started working with him, I remember the time that he had this big, thick Toshiba laptop back in the day, a Satellite Pro. And he hated it so much. And you know what he did? He basically picked up the Satellite Pro laptop, threw at me. I caught it. And he said, like, get rid of it. I want a better laptop than this. And I know that there is a better one out there. So we got him a better laptop, and as you know, back in those days, laptops back then were pretty thick, laptops. I mean, like, let's just be honest here. I mean, like, nowadays, I mean, like, laptops are, pretty decent, light size and smaller, and even, with the ThinkPads or even, the Satellite Pros and the Surface Pro laptops, there are better, opportunities out there with a better grunt and stuff like that. Back in those days, that they didn't really exist, to tell you the truth. It was just basically a new thing. But the laptop itself was a Toshiba laptop, and we called it the brick shithouse. It was funny when I first saw it, and we did a lot of conferences together, and I have to say that I was a bit lost for words. I mean, like, Dennis I did not know Dennis that well, but the thing is that as I got to know him throughout the 4 years I worked alongside with him, I got to the point that I felt that I learned a lot. Like, for example, the first road trip I had with him was actually I went to a place called MICRRH, the home of the Qantas Museum, the Stockman's Hall of Fame, and basically it was considered to be the heart of the outback, aside from Mount Isa, as you know. Mount Isa is the heart of the outback for the Northwest Queensland region, but when I'm going to a very sacred, like cattle country place, like Longridge, I had no idea what I was in for. But the funny thing is that when he first told me was that here are the keys to the 4-drive, you go ahead, drive around and get used to the place. So pretty much I was driving a Land Cruiser, a Toyota Land Cruiser. I was very nervous, I'll be honest with you folks. I mean, like, when I'm driving a manual Land Cruiser, like over 110 grand worth, I was nervous wreck. I was a young kid on a block with a big tank. It was just, like, when I was saying it, it was like I'm driving a big tank, big 4-drive. And we went to this function and to catch up with another doctor, a GP. We had dinner together, we had a good time, we had a good laugh. And that was the first time I had wine with him. And I never had idea what wine was. I mean, I know it tastes like grape in a sense, but I was a bit surprised about it. And he'd actually introduced me Shiraz wine, and that's the thing about Dennis, that he introduced me Shiraz, and then Chardonnay, and then Chablis, and a few other different wines over the time. And it was great fun. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it was great fun. I was enjoying myself, and it was different, I will admit. I will admit that I was a bit surprised about it all, to tell you the truth. And the thing is that Dennis always had a tenacity to have a good smile. Even if things were going wrong and stuff like that, he would always smile, and gave us an impression that it was like along the lines of, hey, no worries, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay to be not okay, right? So I was actually feeling, a part of me was like, man, I am so proud to have known him, that's the biggest thing about it all, that I felt that Dennis was alive, he had a lot of good things in life, and that was the biggest thing about it all. Then I met his other half, Vicky. And Vicky Sheedy, I had no idea who she was. And when I first met her, I thought, like, she's like, oh yeah, some awesome person that's part of Dennis's life. And apparently she worked for a company called MICRRH, and it was based over in Brisbane. I had no idea what it was. Honestly, I had no idea what it was. When I did a bit of Google searching and find out what the company was all about and everything, I could see a bit of resemblance of why Dennis had a lot of respect for Vicky and her family and everyone. And I kind of suspected that Dennis and Vicky have a really good, strong relationship between each other, and it was always been like that. Because, like, every time, it's like not every couple months or every couple weeks. It's basically Dennis is there for about 6 months, and then he goes away for a good 2 months solidly, and pretty much he's away visiting anyone, like his mum, and also Vicky and all the rest. But the funny thing is that I remembered clearly a day as day when I went for a long drive. I was driving down one of the Nissan patrols with the business manager, Alan Phillips, and pretty much between him and I, we went down there from Mount Isa, doing a big long trip for the inland, going down towards the, what was it called? Down the Great Divine Range towards Brisbane. And when we arrived in Brisbane, it was kind of funny in a way because like we did it in, you know, nearly within a day and a half of driving. By the time we got there, and Dennis was there, and we had to remember to bring in a laptop for him because, you know, his new laptop got flown into Malaysia, and it was supposed to be delivered in Brisbane for some reason. And I could remember that we were there for a function. I gave the laptop to Dennis, and his wording was like, "What took you so long?" And I turned around and pointed the boss to Alan Phillips, and Alan Phillips, you know, kind of chuckled and laughed, and you know, and Dennis had a smile and just like, "It's all good," and he just patted him in the shoulder. But you know, I always have a lot of respect for Dennis. I really did, and you know, like there's a conference that we did together, and this conference was so cool. The conference itself, I will admit, the conference that I've been talking about was a conference that, well, his business hosted in the rural, remote country town of Mount Isa in the Great Northwest region of Queensland. It was called Naked and Clueless. It was a very awesome conference, and it was fantastic. If you Google it and you look at the history of everything that was done, Dennis Pashen was there and leading in charge, and I remembered I worked across very hard day in day out alongside with Tom Swan, Teresa O'Connor, Sue Foster, Beverly Crone at the time, also Lencia, Megan Samadan, Mona Phillips, also Fia Terrell, and Alan Phillips, of course, and Katrina Felton Bush. And there was so many people out there. And there was one guy also I wanted to mention as well, is Deep Joseph. And Deep Joseph was a fantastic dude all around. The funny thing is that when Dennis was, you know, talking to us at first about the conference and everything, that it's a great idea and everything, it sounded like it was a dream, really, it was. But he made a great success out of it because he was doing a lot of talking, networking with different medical practitioners and specialists around the world, man. I mean, like, literally, that this guy had the best motivational speech ever, and also that he was so convincing to everyone out there. And you know, the funny thing is that when the dinner time function came, I was praised in the middle of the whole thing. I felt like, you know, shit, to be honest with you, because like I was so tired with all the work I had to do. Mum and Dad were there with me, and also the family members as well too, and you know, everyone out there is good, you know, whatnot. And you know, Megan, the other colleagues as well, were praised for their own efforts. And then I said to myself, "Oh, that's awesome! You know, it's great to hear that they've done it." And all of a sudden, when it came to IT related, technology related, I was praised. And at that moment, I remember it clearly that I was sitting at my table just like this, you know, just sitting like here very casually, and I had, you know, my friend Deep, who's also my work colleague, sitting beside me, and his wife at the time, and my parents were just like adjacent from me, and they, you know, mentioned my name, praised what I did and everything, and I was mind blown. And then everyone applauded me and patted me in the back and everything, and I felt very good, you know. And then, you know, later that night, Dennis came by and he basically put his hand over me, and he said like, "Hey, I'm just glad you're okay," you know. Um, I just, you know, like don't know what to say. You know, I don't know what to say, but it was just, you know, pretty full on. with everything that was happening. And I just said to myself, like, at the end of the day, I was just like, wow, I cannot believe I was praised. I can't believe this all happened. And in all honesty, in all seriousness, though, I was like sitting and like, man, I'm just glad I had a fun, wonderful night, with the family. And Dennis gave me a good reference for my university studies, for the university I was going to. Originally, I wanted to do, JCU, James Cook University. But when I went to James Cook University in Townsville, when I was doing an on-site visit there, and I was getting to know the IT department and people like that, I actually felt like at that point, I remembered back in that time that I didn't really like the idea of it all. And when I saw Dennis there and Tom Swan and that, and I remember we went to a guy's place called Professor Ian Ronsky. And all I remembered was that I vaguely remembered that we went over to his place, had dinner with him, and man, those two guys talk and talk and talk, and we were well fed on that night and that day. I do remember. All I do remember is that the next day I was actually feeling a bit, sore and tired, and I had to fly home the next day. But I was actually, so happy, like when I came back and I was going like, yay! And then all of a sudden I found out I had to work the next day. I'm like, damn it. But the funny thing was that Daz called me up and he goes like, have the day off. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I didn't argue. I thought it was funny. But, we had some crazy moments there. I will admit that the one thing I was sad about was before I left Mount Isa for Rural Health, or MICRRH for short. On the final couple months before I was finishing up for MICRRH, and I just turned around and said to Dennis, I was, like feeling a bit heartbroken to tell him that, like I was coming up to nearly 5 years in the business. I was getting close to the point that I was thinking about leaving and resigning from my job. And he could tell on my face that I was getting ready to pull the pin of my job, and I was thinking about my studies because I had saved up enough money, like I bought a new car. I saved up, like enough money to, pretty much just go, move on. And it was a very difficult time for me to come up with it. So I never said anything to him, and then I let it slide for about a month. But a month came and went, and then I was looking after his four-wheel drive and the two company car four-wheel drives, and I have to admit, my yard at the time back then, it was full with three four-wheel drives, and my work colleagues got jealous of me, actually, to tell you the truth, because like the director wanted me to look after his four-wheel drive, his Land Cruiser, and treat it well, clean it, wash it, blah blah blah. And I did a good job of doing so. And he loved my work. And I have to say a big shout out to my mom and dad actually for helping me out. But the funny thing is that in terms of the company cars in general, I actually always look after them. But my work colleagues, not all of them did look after them very well though, unfortunately. But the funny thing is about it all was that Dennis had a lot of great things to say about me and held me in high regard. At one point, that the business was a bit of in a situation when the one of the companies over there was trying to look for a part-time accountant or admin person and also IT for their workplace. And it was located over in Enid Street. I can't remember the name of it, but I know it's like a sort of like a mental health pathology or something like that. But anyway, I when I told Dennis it's not going to work out, I said to him, "It's like, look, I'm sorry. It's like it's not going to work out. I just want to move on from that place." And Dennis told me, so like that was cool because they actually the people said they didn't like me. And I was happy with that. I really was. And it worked out well, but it hurt the business a bit because like we needed money for ourselves and stuff. But when it when I pushed off about like a couple months later, and then it was getting closer to the end of the year, and I was thinking very seriously about my future. So when I went into the new year in early February, I went to go ahead and do QTAC, did that, came back, and Dennis saw me and he said, "Hey, how did it go for your university?" And then I told him, I was like, "I hope I got a good, good chance of getting in or something like that." And he was like, "Oh, okay, good." He was very supportive, very kind. And the funny thing is, at that point, there and then, he turned around and said to me, he goes like, "How long have you been in the business for?" I told him, I was like, "Nearly 5 years. Nearly." And then he goes like, "Oh, wow, awesome." It's like, "Have you thought of studying uni?" And I told him, I was like, "I have. And I just haven't found the right moment to do it yet." One day he turned around and dropped a hint to me and he said like maybe there's a course and opportunity at the University of Southern Queensland. He didn't say like the reason why, but I said to him, "How come?" And he goes like, "Well, there's a university in a country town if you want, and it's in the middle, near close to Brisbane, and it's not that bad, and it's called Toowoomba." And I went like, "Oh, okay, Toowoomba. Sounds a bit, far from Brisbane, but it was 2 hours drive. But the good thing about it all was that it's a country town. It's not big, and I don't have to be stressed." So, pretty much at that point there and then, I was wondering what I was gonna do, honestly, and pretty much when I figured out at that time, at that moment, I decided, you know what, something has to be done. Like I noticed that Dennis had a lot of things going against him. Back at the time, there was a few things was happening behind the scenes that I felt like, yeah, now's the time to move on. And I know that I was a bit disheartened at first about to tell him this, but I ended up, knocked on my door, knocked on his door in his office, and Dennis was like, yes. And I said to Dennis, like, "Hey, man, just like, can we have a private chat?" And then he goes like, "Yeah, sure." So I closed the door and I sat down, beside his desk, and I was like sitting like this. I go like, I was like this, Dennis. It's like I've been here for nearly 5 years, and in all seriousness, though, I had a great run. I'm enjoying myself and done a great lot of things. Bought a car, saved a lot of money, and really enjoyed my time here at MICRRH or JCU. But I thought about everything, and like there was a time and period of my life that you came across and told me, so like have you thought about going to university and studying? And I actually had thought about it nearly every day. And he goes like, "Oh, okay." It's like, "Have you made a decision where to go?" And I went like, "No." I said like, "But I have to say that I was really thinking about, like what you're saying and like this because, the previous IT guys that came and went, they took over and I felt like, whatever they've done, I got pushed aside. There was one IT manager that I did not get along with as much as I hoped, and I was lucky, unfortunately. And I had nothing against him, really, I did. But I just felt like I was crossing swords. But when I realized that I was looking at a person who has got a graduate degree with a master's, I might add, and I felt like vulnerable because like I was a trainee apprentice and just only graduated with a certificate, and a trade certificate is nothing in comparison to a university degree. So in the end, I just turned around and said like I gotta bite the bullet and have to you know cut my losses and find something better. So I took Dennis's advice to heart when I thought about, going to university, and I said to myself, maybe I just needed an extra push, and I was really glad I did. And in the end, I made that push. I basically turned around and said to Dennis, like, you know what? I decided to resign and go and do my studies full time. Dennis reached out and reached out his hand and basically gave me a handshake, stood up with me, hugged me, and said, "Good on you." And he said to me, "Look, I'll make sure that you'll be well looked after before you go." And then I turned around and was like, "Oh, okay." And, what was it that he had in mind? And I was shocked. He gave me a lot of good things. Aside from the staff, he gave me a backpack and a few other things to use for my studies, and I will never forget that. But Dennis left me a nice memoir. He gave me some, Scottish and Irish music to listen, and I still have it to this day. And also on top of that, there was one thing that I will never forget was Dennis's words of wisdom. And I still have it close to my heart, and I always do appreciate his friendship and everything that he's done. The funny thing about it all was that when Dennis was about to go on his work traveling thing, he wasn't there for my farewell. But when I saw him again in Brisbane, I had that nice farewell with him. It was very nice. It was very pleasantly done there. I was emotional. I had tears in my eyes because I loved him. I really did. I loved Dennis Pashen. He was a fantastic friend and mentor to me that I consider that I will forever cherish in my heart and mind for many years. When I went to university, got my degree and everything like that, I told him that I graduated. And he was very happy to see me graduate, and he was very happy to see me succeed. There was some random moments that we ran across each other over Mount Isa at times when I was passing through visiting. And when I was visiting, I actually dropped by at the Mount Isa Center for Rural Health as a one-off, just to drop by and say good day. But I found out around that time, Dennis was in his final year working at MICRRH and he left. And a lot of things have changed since then. I mean, like, he left a great legacy, and a lot of things he's done there with MICRRH is phenomenal. I mean, like, the Mount Isa community and the other, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander places like Normanton, Burketown, Baduri, Booyah, even Longridge, and the most like Thursday Island and all those places in the northern, part of the Golden Cup area of Queensland. He had done a fantastic job. His legacy was well known, well respected, even at Townsville. And yeah, I miss him. I do miss him a lot. But the one thing that I will always remember about Dennis, and I will never forget it to this day, was that how much he held me in high regard. He fought for me and also believed in me. And that is the biggest thing that I could not take that away from him. There are funny moments, like that we both laughed and joked and cried and ah man, I just miss that guy, I really do. I love that guy. Bit of a shame though, what happened to him. He died over in Tasmania. Um, where was it? I mean, like, he was swimming or something. There was a swimming accident or something. But yeah, I mean, like, I was really sad to hear where he died over at Brunny Island. Um, that was a tragedy. I mean, like, I could not believe it. I just could not believe what happened. But, you know, Dennis always loved fishing. He always loved his dogs. He always loved his partner, Vicky, and his family and friends. He also loved his ex-wife, Susan, as well. And his mum. Man, I have to admit, when I saw Dennis with his mum, I could see the resemblance. But you know, like when his mother passed away before he did, I will admit that you know Dennis changed a bit since then. But I was shocked, you know, like when I found out, you know, a wonderful man like this being taken away too soon. And I have to say that you know when I think about this and how I feel about such loss that has impacted on us all, I feel that it's an eye-opening experience. And you know, when I saw back at MICRRH what they did about their thoughts and tribute toward him and his family, and even the doctors and stuff like that, we all loved him. There's no doubt about it. I mean, like we all loved him. He was so entertaining, funny, courageous. He did some stupid stuff, but I tell you what, as we look back, it made us all laugh. God, I miss him. But I want to say thank you, Dennis Pashen, for your life that you have given us and given me as well. And I am really grateful to have met you. I really am. And I'm very proud as a person who have known you for quite some time. And you've been have a wonderful friend. And I'm very sad to see you go, honestly. And shit, I mean, like, you done a lot of good things for me, man. I mate, can't, you know, there's no doubt about it. But, you know, to Dennis Pashen's friends, loved ones, and family, and everyone out there, he is a wonderful man. I mean, like, we'll have to remember him as that. But at the end of the day, I just want to say thank you. And we love you, brother. We miss you, man. And one day, we will meet again. One day. But thanks again, Dennis Pashen. And yeah, he was one crazy, funny associate professor. Or professor, I should say. God, I miss that guy. Love him. Thanks, everyone, for watching my video. And stay safe, take care, everyone. And thank you for enjoying my short podcast and tribute to a good dear friend, Dennis Pashen. May he rest in peace. God bless.